Well, the public knows the budget is in a bad way, and this is impacting how they think about new spending initiatives. This is according to new research. Voters ask themselves, what will this cost me in terms of either new taxes down the road or the loss of other government services? For more, I'm joined by Redbridge Group Director Simon Welsh. Simon, really interesting. What have you got out of the focus groups you've been doing this week? What are people saying to you?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. And it's something we've been watching emerging for a while. It's not just a recent thing, is this idea of sort of resource competition around government spending. So, yeah, when you sort of talk to people about new policy proposals, new ideas to change things, you've got to deal now with this kind of resource question that people are asking, which is sort of less so, will this result in new taxes on me? More so around what's it going to cost me? It's this sort of sense of zero-sum game. If we're going to bolster spending in one area, there's an assumption that it's got to come from spending in another area. So what's going to be the services cost to me in these kinds of new ideas and new policies? Now, there's a couple of things I'd say around this because it's an interesting bit of nuance. One is, the first thing I'd say is, it's certainly not to suggest that the governments can't or shouldn't suggest, new ideas, new policies, new initiatives. Rather, what it is it's just a different communication dynamic that I think sort of, political communicators have got to get used to. We've sort of got some political communication you often see where the dollar amount is the story. So, people will sort of express their, support for mental health by, we've allocated $1 billion and the number is the bit that matters. That dynamic has changed. And I think this is the interesting bit that sort of political communicators are going to have to adapt to, is you've now got to tell that value story. Why this new thing? Why are you prioritising it? Sort of tell the story, explain the story of the priority on it and the value story that you're trying to tell here. And so no longer in that phase where sort of the number is the story. And I think the other little sting in the tail on this is also this sort of resource competitiveness means that people are really tuned in and really anxious about cutting spending. So while, you've got to explain and justify why you want to do new and different things, they're really sensitive to the cut of spending because become increasingly reliant on public services. We're seeing people that previously would have been in private sector, for health or education, that because of the cost of living crisis that we're still going through, are sort of returning back to public services. So there is this sensitivity around cutting of public services or cutting of, government support to particular sectors. So there's some really interesting things going on. As I say, I think the implications are more on the communication side for governments than they are on the substantive side. I wouldn't be suggesting that they need to stop doing new things. It's just about how now you communicate that and sort of breaking that mold of letting the dollar figure tell the story for you.
Well, just quickly then, given the debate that's going on at the moment, the conversation I just had with James Patterson about tax reform, do you think this is an easy, a neutral, a hard environment in which to build that consensus?
It's interesting. We've done a bit of work around tax, and it certainly is something that comes up unprompted in our groups when we talk to people about, what are the things that Australia's got to fix or get right if we're going to have a good future. Tax does come up without prompting from us, which tells us that it's something that people are really thinking about and worried about. I'm yet to find a person in our focus groups, an average working Australian who thinks that the tax system is good, like thinks that the tax system is working for them.
Smart.
There's this real sense that, sort of powerful economic interests, whether it be big business or the very wealthy, aren't paying their share. To use the old Joe Hockey line, a leaners more than lifters, and that the burden is very much falling on average workers and particularly Middle Australia.
Yeah, right.
Middle Australia feels really forgotten in this story. The point they make to us in the focus groups all the time is they're not in such a situation that they have access to government supports and government payments and those sorts of things, and they're grateful for that, but they're also not in a position where they're able to take advantage of the tax breaks and the incentives that are there if you've got the high income and the big accountants and all the rest of it. So they really feel this sort of sense of the hollowing out of Middle Australia, and it's tied up in concerns about wealth inequality, growing wealth inequality in this country. Again, this is something that comes up in the focus groups unprompted from us, that that they fear that we're becoming more like America. So there's all these themes floating around, which I think give government the opportunity to really grasp the nettle here and do some stuff in this space.
I think it'd be harder not to undertake tax reform at this point, given we're now having a conversation. So tough job for Jim Chalmers and Anthony Albanese ahead, and it's going to take some time to build consensus. Simon, always good to talk to you. Thank you.